There is never black and white. Every single business that exists today is that one day or today already or still is providing a service that is needed. This is why companies or organizations exist and why they do not disappear. If what they are offering does not have any use, any need, they will disappear. The question, therefore, is how it is done. And on the how, you have influence.
Welcome, everyone. We are here to co-learn, co-create all together. And today we have the pleasure of having Mahmud with us.
Okay, friends, it's a really great pleasure to be here, seeing so many familiar faces. Let's take a minute to think about the concept of apparent contradictions. This is one of the serious problems of the world today, which is polarization. And we have to address it. And one way to address it is the topic of coherence. I'm not going to talk about polarization, but I want to use the concept of coherence to understand our theme for today. You see, once we have managed to go beyond either black or white, either good or bad, either us or them, then we come to the idea that the real thing that we are looking for in order to have meaning is the right combination. And that's why there is no meaningful work, because we create the right combination between the work that is offered and what we can bring to it.
So if you can go many directions with the start of your career because of the studies that you did before, how do you know what a good place or company or field is to start in? Like, does it have to align with one of the goals of the Baha'i faith, or is there another way to fill out, like, should you go into the direction where you're good at, or should you go into a direction where there's a lot of development?
Conditions are different all the time. I don't think there is really one formula or one thing, but I would say that really you can. I was just talking to a friend who used to work at the beginning of it with the organization called the Best Companies to Work For. And he was explaining how they came up with the idea, what are the criteria that they set up in order to do the ranking of companies, etc. Interestingly enough, they said that what almost one concept around which everybody was in agreement is that if there was trust reigning in that company, then it was a good place to work in. But I don't believe the same company will be attractive to everybody because precisely of your passion. You have a passion and you have capacities. And then finding the best combination, finding the coherence between your passion and your capacities is a formula that you alone can create. Of course, you can consult. Of course, mentoring is there for that. Of course, there are people who will, you can ask people about their experiences, etc. But the right combination, you are the only one who can create it because nobody will know from inside you your potential and your passion and your capacities.
And how do you know if within a company there is a lot of trust? Like, do you talk to people, or is there some sort of way to figure that out also online as well?
Listen, the first activities that I started were back in 1980s. So there was nothing to consult online. It
Yeah,
was
okay.
trial and error. And again, you see, even with the second example I gave you, we started the company with other people, therefore there was trust. After a period of time, it was not there anymore because interests became divergent. So there is no reality that stays there forever. Sometimes a company is bought by another one, that things change. Sometimes the the CEO changes, things change. The question is, again, I would ask the question, knowing a little bit about the company, which people today have many more options in order to look them up.
Mhm.
The question would be, how much do I believe I can do something for the company? Not the other way around.
Okay. Yeah.
It is cliche that Kennedy said, don't think about what your country can do for you, but think of what you can do for your country. But the cliche is as true about our individual activities. You know, trust, by the way, trust is not something that you go and look for. Trust is something you bring to the company. In other words, first, you are trustworthy. That's your first duty when you go into a company that is not yours. And the second thing is your mission to bring about trust within the company. So the question is, when you go in, can you do that? Do you see it there or not? The other reality of today that is very different from my time is that in my time, when you would look at somebody's CV and they had hopped around every 2 years, you would say it's an unstable person.
Mhm.
No
Yeah,
more
no,
today.
it's usual, very usual.
No more
Yeah.
today. So that in itself is, first of all, a challenge, but a good one for the employer, because they will try to make their best to deserve their employees.
Mm.
And it's a good thing for the employees because it gives them the option to test and trial. But if they really want something out of it, it's not to go and test how good the company is to test how good they can be by contributing to the company.
Okay, so looking at your own qualities and seeing what you can bring to the company is a good
Yep.
starting point. Okay. And then I had a little bit of a related but separate questions. So if you have companies coming to you towards the end of your studies and pursuing you for a job at their company, and you yourself have an interest in some other companies, is it better to go with the companies that are pursuing you? Or is it better to try and approach the companies that you don't have a relationship with, but you might find interesting to work there?
If they have come to you, it means they are interested, and therefore they must invest the time that is necessary to have conversations with you.
Mm.
Take
Yeah.
their time, ask the questions. In an
Okay.
interview, you are not the interrogated part. You are also a questioner.
Mhm.
So you ask them questions. It's a bit different when you're running after a company, but still, when you're looking for one and you find the opportunity of the first interview, tell yourself, if that first interview does not give you all the answers, it's not worth pursuing.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
Because if you do not get answers to your questions, then it's rolling a dice. If you're a gambler, do it.
Um, yeah. Okay. Thank you.
So I was just thinking, a lot has changed since 1980s. We have a lot of different job opportunities these days, and the majority of what I see, unless you're an entrepreneur, is that roles are operational, and you have limited capacity to really create influence, and you're a little detached from the final product of your work. And so I'm thinking, in a role like this, where you have kind of limited influence and perhaps you can't see the end product, how can one find inspiration in these sorts of roles that make up the majority of jobs these days?
Uh, why would influencing the end product be the only way where you can exert your influence? If you make life better for the 10 people who are sitting in the same room as you, is that not good enough? I'm asking the question. I'm not saying it is or not. I'm just questioning the assumption that when we arrive in a company and we believe if we manage to change all its policies and all its investment purposes and everything that comes into the product, then we have been successful in changing it. Change starts with small stuff. The day you serve the coffee to people who have not had this privilege of companionship, you've already brought the first seeds of change. The question again is your intention and your purpose. If you enter into Shell and you decide that you are going to entirely transform their business into renewables, well, good luck. Sorry, Zach. Was it anything close to what you
Yeah,
had in mind?
I think I was asking about kind of where you personally draw inspiration from. Perhaps my question was also poorly phrased. So I think you've you've had a wealth more career experience than me, and I'm wondering where can I draw inspiration to create a meaningful career? Do you consult the Baha'i writings a lot, or how do you go about the process of finding meaning in a career, which I think is something that a lot of people struggle in these days, especially when roles you can't be the first in so many things these days.
You know, a little commercial intervention. I collaborate with Soul.com, who may be uh, familiar with it. Look it up, mostly because of what I'm going to say now. At Soul.com, what we do is to help companies transform themselves into communities, because we believe that no matter what size and what type of a company you are, the real way for you to improve, to bring about change, is to transform yourself into a community. And we know from our own experience within our community that everything starts with an individual that takes an initiative, that creates a core group around him or herself, and that core group starts with small actions, brings about small changes, and the addition of small actions, small changes within a core group and going to other core groups and creating a group and a movement will eventually build community. Even if everybody in the company wants to build a community, it will not happen overnight. It has to be the sum of individual actions. If you are the person who starts with that individual action, and if you consider that is meaning for you, you have created your meaningful job for a while, because you will change the definition of that meaning once you have gone to phase one. And then phase two becomes meaningful, and then phase three becomes meaningful. So the question of intention now, purpose is what you want to finally achieve, and intention is that you do want to do it. These are things that you will have to assess every day. There is a reason why we are supposed to call ourselves to account every day, because none of those things is once and for all.
Thank you very much, Mahmoud. Actually, it's funny because my question was a bit related to the question that Zach asked initially, and going back to the historical introduction you just made about the Industrial Revolution. In the West, we tend to often think that it's a thing of the past, but the truth is, industrialization continues. It's just been outsourced to other areas of the globe. And I'm thinking about sweatshops in Southeast Asia, or the garment industry workers in Bangladesh, or even in certain parts of Eastern Europe, where most of the industry has moved now, most of the production in Europe. Does all of this also apply to a factory line worker who perhaps doesn't have, you might say, being the devil's advocate here, the luxury of asking themselves this question? There's only one job in town. There's no way of leaving town, and it is to work for Foxconn or for whatever industry there is, and there is no influence that you can make beyond just towing the line and doing what you're told, working those hours and making sure that the quality of what you do is right. I mean, you can certainly, by your behavior, be a good example to the other employees to limits of your abilities, but you are locked in you do not have the freedom of certain choices as an entrepreneur in a developed country or in a better social position. Could you, or maybe I'm wrong, I don't know, it's a bit of a challenge here, but I'm eager to hear your thoughts about this.
Friends, with Ilya, we have many interesting conversations. So I allow myself to ask him a question for his own question. What would Frankl tell you?
Viktor Frankl, right?
Yes, yes.
Well, he would say that meaning is everything, and that even in the concentration camp, if you can survive, you have chances of surviving, at least, if you find meaning in your day-to-day survival existence.
And do you think there is no possible friendship among people who are working in hard circumstances?
Absolutely, maybe even more so.
Now, I do understand that several of our conversations, or at least my experience, even though in Latin America I try to be as much possible in contact with you. Sure, if this same conversation were had with people who are, in mining in South Africa, apparel industry in Bangladesh, probably some other insights would come from the participants into this conversation. Of course. But we can try to also imagine what it could be and how they do give meaning to their work. I'm sure that not all of them believe that it's meaningless, but we have to find out what, and I cannot speak for them.
Have you interviewed somebody for a job, Mahmoud? And what do you ask them?
The question may have varied, but what I was looking for is whether I could trust them. The only thing, because if you have to look behind your back all the time with colleagues, you use positive energy for a negative purpose. If you trust the person and they don't know technically what they have to do, you'll help them train. You train them yourself. And my organizations have been mostly technical, even though I'm not an engineer myself, but I would sit down, learn from my engineers what the thing was only totally about. But the interview was not only about their capacity, their technical knowledge. For me, 90% of the point was, can we trust this person to be a good member of the community? Done a few hundreds of those, not millions, not thousands.
What about right now? There's a lot of people that have there's one question that the one person didn't want to ask a question, but I think it was great because in spirit of service, we want to have time to serve. But then companies say you have to work night, day, 24 hours per day, always be available. So how can you shape your career by telling your company, this is important for my life, service, and therefore I will give 200% to you, but I need space to serve. How would you suggest that a young person is looking for that, that is just used to serving, needs their service space, approach a company and say, I need my time to serve? How can you sell it to your company?
Let's look at it from different perspectives. First of all, we talked about coherence from the beginning, right? Coherence means not opposing things. Service and work are not opposed to one another. So creating a balance between two things, it means they are opposing one another. They're not. So to a great extent, at least this is the privilege I've had in my life, in my own companies, my work was 200% service. So I really, even at the beginning when I was doing that job with the companies, with banks and thing, I thought I was doing something useful because it was giving them more insight into their trade and transactions, etc., until I realized that the only benefit of all of that was more profit. So then it didn't make sense anymore. But I think you remember when we had the lady from gosh, who did the interreligious work in the US in what company was it?
May
Danielle?
Mosen in
May.
Intel.
Yes, in Intel. And you remember what she said that the CEO of Intel had told his people in his company. If what you are doing on Monday at your job does not reflect what you were doing on Sunday, I don't want you. I want you fully in the organization. More and more organizations are understanding that once you are your 100% true self, you're more useful. If they don't understand it, again, well, if you have a choice, don't look into them.
I like the theme and what you explained, Mahmoud, that it's not about an industry. It's not about a function, but about how you relate to that and what you make out of it, and even the small steps. And I think that's where, as you start a career, nobody knows what they want to do. I mean, people really switch completely. So it's okay to try. I think, Borna, when you're asking, is that the right industry, right company? I think probably it's a connection, your ability to make a change, and on your personal journey, how that fits. And then nowadays, it's very acceptable to switch, whereas before it was much more difficult. So it's okay not to know. Most of the people here don't know and they switch. And after the couple of years, they switch again and completely different. And it's totally fine and acceptable nowadays.
Mahmoud, can I ask you, building on what Wahid just said, I love your gardening leave. This is new. It's winter. What are you going to do in the garden in the winter? Anyway, balancing, yeah, because I know a lot of young people with a lot of values and ideals, they go into a company, black or white. Either everything is perfect or are rejected. And Wahid just said it is not black and white. So it's also about giving in, allowing. Can you share something, Mahmoud, about your views between the 100% purity of everything being absolutely right and values driven and adapting, but not giving up your values in situations which are usually not so black and white?
I think to some extent, for me, it's even difficult to say it because it's so obvious. There is no black and white. There is never black and white. You know, every single business that exists today is that one day or today already or still is providing a service that is needed. This is why companies or organizations exist and why they do not disappear. If what they are offering does not have any use, any need, they will disappear. The question, therefore, is how it is done. And on the how, you have influence. The thing of black and white is also applies to values. Let me just use this last example. You know, we believe that values are absolute and they are only absolute in their definition, not in their application. Tell you what I mean. Justice is a value and it's absolute. There is no discussion. Justice is only a good thing. On the other hand, peace is an absolute value. Peace is good and there's no discussion. War is not good. But when in the 90s, the government of Colombia made an agreement, a peace agreement with the FARC to end 60 years of war, the government's purpose was peace at all price. The agreement that they made with the FARC was refused by the people because they wanted justice. So the right agreement that came, more or less right agreement that came afterwards, was the one that had both respect for peace and for justice. And they are not in absolute compatible. They are basically put together in the best combination, which means none of them is absolute, none of them is 100%. Black is 100%, white is 100%. There is nothing black or white. Everything is colorful.